Hello everyone, I'm Guillermo from Fortivo Music Channel, and welcome to Music Talks, our video podcast series. These are relatively short interviews with prominent people from all walks of life who don't work in the music industry, but who are in many ways impacted by music. Today we're fortunate to have a double whammy with two incredible guests, Jane Poynter and Taber MacCallum. Currently, they are the co-founders and co-CEOs of a company called Space Perspective, which is developing a capsule and balloon system that will take people to the edge of space starting in 2024. This comes on the heels of long careers in the space industry, but they're probably most well known for being two of the 8 crew members of a project called Biosphere 2, which in the early 90s proved that humans could survive in a completely enclosed environment for 2 years. I've known them for over a decade, but this was our first opportunity to talk about music. As you will hear, clearly this plays a huge role in their lives, so they were quite enthusiastic about the topic. I hope you'll enjoy this lively conversation with Jane Poynter and Taber MacCallum. Okay, welcome, Jane Poynter and Taber MacCallum. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Hello, this is fun. I don't get to talk about this all day.
It is fun. I know we usually talk about space or oceans or Venus and all sorts of other fun stuff, but I think this is going to be the first time we've actually been able to talk about music. So I'm kind of excited because I know it's played an important role in your lives, in your past. So why don't we just jump in and get going? Sound good?
Sounds awesome.
All right. So first things first, whichever one, and by the way, as we go, there's 2 of you. So whoever wants to answer a question first, jump in. You two are used to doing co-interviews, so I'm sure you can figure this out. Why don't we start with just kind of your personal backgrounds, if either of you are actually musical or musically trained, if you're musicians or...
Well, Jane's more musically trained than I am, but I did... probably, I don't know, starting at 7 or 8, something like that, took drum lessons and, played a kit for a while and never really did the band thing. But then that sort of morphed into, American Indian drumming and then sort of Middle Eastern drumming. And I played for a belly dance troupe, which is tremendously fun for a teenager to be playing drums for belly dancers.
A belly dance troupe?
Yeah.
As a teenager? Oh, that's fun. Yeah.
That was awesome. We were in Sri Lanka for a while. I took tabla lessons and got into that whole headspace of, sort of singing the drum that you're playing and sort of the meditative aspects of tablas. And so rhythm and that kind of energy and beat has really been sort of what grounded me in music.
So the very first time I saw Taber on the research boat that we were on, for Taber for a couple of years, me for half a year before we went into the Biosphere. It was part of Biosphere in training. So I get onto the ship that was in the harbor in Sri Lanka. I go into the library and there's Taber playing the tabla. That was my first impression. That was pretty good. So I grew up very differently. So I grew up playing classical music. I played the piano. I did the whole orchestra thing. I led the choir in school. I have this very powerful memory as a teenager being in a choir, seeing Verdi's Requiem in a cathedral with 200 other kids and a professional orchestra. And it was extremely powerful because, the noise that we were making together, this beautiful piece of music that we were creating together that was, in this extraordinary space. It's really stuck with me my entire life. And it was really about playing with other people. I've never really wanted to be a solo artist in any way, shape, or form, but playing with other people, it's a lot like when you put a team together in a company. It's like, when I love watching really great jazz musicians play when they're improvising and they're all listening to each other. It's kind of like what it is when you're in an early stage company.
Yeah, and around the house, it was mostly sort of counterculture music, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Janis Joplin, Beatles, that whole genre. And then, of course, a lot of the jazz and blues coming out, and Charlie Parker and that whole genre as well. So it's pretty sort of mixed, but very much of the time of the 60s and 70s. My parents would go out on, peace marches, and I'd be on my father's shoulders, and we'd be listening to Hare Krishna the whole time, that kind of thing, right?
Nice.
Oh, that's funny.
You mentioned meeting Tabor on the boat Sri Lanka, and then leading up to Biosphere 2. I know that whole group that you were both with leading up to Biosphere 2, it seems like you were always doing theater type stuff or music type stuff. So it seemed like that played a pretty important role in the lead up to Biosphere 2, right?
Well, yeah, so it was really interesting, right? There's a very strong belief in sort of the bringing together of art and science. And that, honestly, I think that had a pretty profound effect on me personally. I was lucky that I got to meet some true greats because of this. I would go to these early conferences that the group would put together when we were really thinking about the biosphere, and there would be Buckminster Fuller talking about how we should be going to space, and then right next to him was the free jazz giant Ornette Coleman, who I then did some work with around the biosphere, which was just incredible to have these people come together like that. I remember seeing Ravi Shankar playing in one of the group's places in London, the October Gallery. And I had no idea who this guy was. I mean, most of the time I didn't even know who I was listening to, right? I was in my early 20s and having my mind blown listening to these truly amazing world-class artists in this very diverse, eclectic background. And Ravi Shankar at the time was just astounding to listen to him. And then I went and I saw Segovia, who, at the time it was fairly near the end of his life. And I'll never forget seeing him. He was almost carried onto the stage. He was so frail. And then he sits down and he just transforms the entire audience with his incredible classical Spanish guitar. I grew up listening to flamenco as well, because I spent a lot of time in southern Spain. And so that was also a tremendous influence on me. But it's having these people that really pushed the envelope of the music and being on that cutting edge was a true gift.
I think both, art and science are all exploring reality, right? It's all penetrating truth. And so I really think of them as sort of different sides of the same coin. They're different, but they're both, equally disciplined. They're both equally rigorous. They're both really exploring a truth and, working through hypotheses. And, when you really sort of step back a bit, and music is a great example of that, because it has all these harmonics and math to the music. It's really close to science and engineering, right? These are all sort of the same ilk in my mind. And so when you explore culture through music, it's a great access. When you're in Spain and you sing flamenco, or your kabuki theater in Japan, and all these crazy Asian opera music, or I went to an outdoor opera in Italy, just outside of Rome, and the auditorium is filled with people that are so into the opera. It's like a baseball game in the US, where they've all got their lighters out and they're cheering, and we had a lot of Pavarotti around the house growing up, and so we were just listening to Ave Maria this morning. And,
Tabor has won me over with Pavarotti. I have to say that was not one of my favorites.
Nice.
Oh my God.
Well, so flash forward a little bit. So as you went into Biosphere 2, first of all, I thought this was funny because I usually give this homework assignment, right, to come up with a playlist if you're going on a long-term space mission, or if you're going underwater for a while, or if you're going to be on a deserted island for a while. What 10 songs would you take with you? And then I realized, but you two were actually in Biosphere 2 for 2 years. Now, you weren't cut off completely from the world as far as communication and all that stuff, but when you were in Biosphere 2, did you take certain music with you? And how did you as a group decide who was listening to what, when?
We actually took musical instruments in with us, because how a song captures emotionally the time in which you either heard it or wrote it or made it. And so we actually did a fair amount of writing music and playing music in the Biosphere, just as a way to explore the experience, but also we would cut in sounds from the Biosphere. We got, the Galagos barking, and we would, put that on, these high-tech MIDI players, that you could play with. And we really played with the experience. And, the Biosphere 2 was a long, hard journey. And there were certainly times there where relationships were shifting, and you're wondering what the heck's going on, and you're 18 months into a 2-year mission, and can I really get there? Music helps sort of capture that. Music helps get an even keel. Obviously helps with energy when you need it. So it was incredibly useful. And interestingly, we talked a lot with Mark Kelly about music and spaceflight. And he loves to tell the story when they were departing station for the last time. So the shuttle's pulling away, and somebody pulls out a boombox, and they start playing
the Blue Danube.
The Blue Danube. And he does a circumnavigation of the station playing the Blue Danube. And he said that's one of the most powerful memories in his life.
Which is, of course, the piece from 2001,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
So what was really fun, you asked about, music and Biosphere 2. And I remember actually before we went in, it was really fun. There was a part of the structure was called the lung. We had this, it was a variable volume chamber, right? It took up the expansion and contraction of the atmosphere inside Biosphere 2, which was completely sealed whilst we lived in it, sealed tighter than the International Space Station. So in the lung, it was incredible reverberation because it was essentially a metal box that was 150 feet in diameter, was circular. And we had people come into this before we went in to perform, and just completely extemporaneously. So one time we had these incredible Tibetan monks come in and do chanting in there, which was, it was just transporting. It was literally entrancing as you're inside the lung, listening to the reverberation of this. And
they were playing on the reverberation, right? So they would do harmonics in the reverberation in that deep Tibetan chant, and they were just bouncing off each other, and you could see they were just like cranking on all these reverberations, and it was really something else.
So with all of these performances, plus you took instruments in and you were writing songs as well, did you ever put out a Biosphere 2 LP or something?
Oh my gosh. So we have to admit to the fact that there may be evidence out there to some of this. So we went in there with this wonderful guy, Roy Walford, whose goal it was to go into the Biosphere as this world-renowned gerontologist, pathologist, who he really was. He was the guy who basically invented the calorie restriction diet. So he wanted to go in as a scientist and come out as an artist. And so he took into the Biosphere like one project after another, which we then became the mostly willing participants in. And one of them was this music video that we did that was, it's hilarious.
You can find it online.
It's called Ecological Thing. It's called Ecological Thing, and it is truly funny. But it's actually pretty fun. I mean, it's pretty cool.
So he edited up the video, and we did the music inside, and it somehow ended up on YouTube when YouTube came out. So if you see Roy Walford Ecological Thing, that's us.
Well, we will find it, and we will put the link in the description to this video. And
okay, I would like to apologize
to
our communications team. I'm so sorry about this.
Nice.
No, it's fun. Yeah, no, it's totally fun.
All right, so I'll make sure that we put that in there somewhere. Make it available to everyone. So maybe let's move out of Biosphere 2 and kind of move ahead, because I know you put a lot of thought into this playlist homework assignment, and it's actually very pertinent to a lot of the work that you're doing now. with Space Perspective. So I know you started putting together a playlist. Maybe you can kind of walk us through what you've got so far, and or if you've managed to finish it, and we can kind of go from there.
Well, we've had a bunch of ideas, so this might be a bit random, but I think to me, Space Perspective is a noun. It's a way of seeing the Earth. It's seeing the Earth. It generates the overview effect. But we think of that perspective as something sort of attainable. But it's more than just seeing the Earth on the whole. It's seeing how all of these cultures and musical traditions and everything else come together. And so a lot of what we find magical about music is how different kinds of music have come together. You know, you see Afro-Cuban music, or mixings of different kinds of jazz. We see these amalgamations, and so you look at planetary migration through music, and so there's a lot of that inspires what we do too.
So like as an example, so one of them on our list is Tito Puente does Take 5. Oh my goodness. I mean, already you have this incredible group. And then he does, a jazz piece.
Right. So Dave Brubeck mixed in with Tito Puente.
I mean,
right.
What a mind blowing.
Yeah.
It's done so well. I mean,
Yeah, I saw that on your list, and I thought, wait, I didn't know Tito Puente did a version.
No,
of
I didn't either.
Brubeck's.
You got to listen to it. It's amazing. I mean, usually what I would call a cover, really not all that good, generally speaking. Oh, this is not a cover. He owns it. It's awesome. Yeah, and then, like as another example, Ojos de Brujo, who sadly no longer are together, but they were an amazing band doing flamenco, and they started out as traditional flamenco artists, and then created huge controversy because they then brought in a lot of urban feel and senses to the music. So you've got this great crossover, and it feels so modern. It takes this incredible tradition of flamenco and makes it incredibly modern. I just love it. And so those are some of the kinds of things, like when I was looking at my playlist before, that's on Spotify, that I have on Spotify, like what am I listening to? And I just loved it. It was this great mix of there's Pink and there's Adele. Oh, and there's didgeridoos and African music, because it's like what I want to take on a long journey to space is I want to take humanity with me, which means I want to take music from around the world. And to me, that's incredibly important. And then the other part of our playlist is you have to have the space music, right? I mean,
I saw that. Yep.
That
really speaks to space.
There's also the dance. I mean, music is just sort of in some ways half. I mean, look at the passion behind flamenco dance and that whole tradition and how it evolved. And we were at a wedding a few weeks ago, and the surprise performer was the Gypsy Kings, and they just burst into the wedding, right? And just like the power and everybody's dancing, and that whole way of sort of transforming a room. Yeah, that was like one of the greatest room transformations ever. They just came out on stage, and it was amazing.
It was awesome. Okay, so let's talk about some of these songs that are on here, right? Okay, so the first on the list is Pharrell's Happy song. Okay, I love the song because it makes me happy, but also if you listen to it, I think it's like around line 3 or 4, very early in the song, he sings about a balloon going to space.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
Yes.
I don't think I remember that. The funny thing is, I saw that as your first song, and I thought, one of the problems with that song on a, long mission or whatever is that song is so catchy. You're going to be like, don't worry, you're going to be saying that for like, oh no, wait. No, that's Bobby McFerrin. You're talking.
No,
Pharrell,
I'm talking
happy.
about that. Yeah.
Yes. I had "Don't Worry, Be Happy" in my head. Yeah. So I saw your list, and the rest of the day I was singing "Don't Worry, Be Happy" in my head.
But that's a good one too.
It's not bad.
No, that one's too catchy.
Yeah, but that's not the one I meant.
Okay, yeah. So Pharrell's, he's got a line in there about a balloon. I did not know that.
A balloon going to space.
Yeah.
Even.
I'll check it out.
Yeah. All right. So we talked about the balloon Danube. Bowie. Gotta have Bowie.
Yep, gotta have Bowie, of course. Space Oddity, of course. Then there's the Chris Hadfield version of it, which is awesome. He did a great job on that.
Yeah.
And of course, you have to have Holt's The Planets, because I mean, you just have to, right? I mean, it's a given.
Yeah, it was actually fun. I went back and listened to some of it. As we were putting this together, I listened to every one of these again, which was super fun. And listening to the planets, and yeah, you got to have that. Okay, so Bohemian Rhapsody. I mean, look, first of all, Queen, got to take Queen with me on a long flight. Bohemian Rhapsody, just an awesome, great, sort of like a genre-breaking, innovative song, right? But what's really interesting is that if you hear that, you know that he speaks about Galileo in the song. Well, that was very specifically put in there, apparently, for James May, who is an astrophysicist. So it has a very specific tie-in.
Brian May?
Space. What did I say?
James, but Brian May, right?
It's a different May. Yeah, he went up in a yeah, right. So sorry, Brian May. You're exactly right. Yeah. Which was, I think, is kind of a cool anecdote, and it's great.
I didn't know. So did he put the lyrics in, or did Freddie Mercury put it in for him?
Yeah, so that I think we would have to actually ask.
Yeah,
if that's true, but that's certainly something maybe it's an urban legend, but it's certainly something I've heard.
But that's a great song to take, and obviously Brian May being an astrophysicist certainly doesn't hurt. So
certainly doesn't hurt.
And then there's sort of the heartstring puller. A little while after Gabby Giffords was shot, Congressman Giffords, your husband Mark Kelly was scheduled to go to station on the shuttle, and there was a big back and forth. Should he go? And he asked friends, he asked people he knew, Gabby, and then we got interviewed. What do you think Gabby would want? And we all universally said, if you didn't go because of Gabby, she would be pissed, right? So he obviously went, but when he was up, he did a link with U2 and a Beautiful Day, where he's got words to the song floating, and he's bringing out sort of his big cards, and he links to a concert with U2, and it's a really magical moment where at the end he says, tell my wife I love her so she knows.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, it makes me cry.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So, okay, you got to have James Brown. I feel good. I mean, if, for those moments when maybe you don't feel so good on a long, long flight, assuming it's a long flight. I mean, if we're going to Venus, it's going to be a fairly long flight.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Oh, and then Who Runs the World? Girls. Thank you, Beyonce. Oh, yeah. All about it. Go ahead.
And I remember when Janet Jackson came out with Rhythm Nation, that was really a whole sort of change in, wow, that's what music videos are all about. That's what this is supposed to be, right? It's really really amazing when that came out.
Well, it was really cool, and I was just re-listening to the lyrics as well, and totally pertinent, right? She's talking about no geographical boundaries, about being colorblind. And of course, when you go to space, one of the big things that you get as part of the space perspective, the overview effect, is this idea that we are a singular human family, that there are no geographical boundaries. It's a myth. It's something. It's a human creation. So I just thought that was super cool.
It's funny. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to the lyrics of all these songs now that you're picking. It's interesting.
Oh yeah, super cool. And of course, Louis Armstrong. Gotta have that. Wonderful World. Tearjerker every time. Super awesome.
Talked about Tito Puente's Take 5, and how that sort of merges cultures and different genres. That's great. This was actually Jane's idea, Fanfare for the Common Man. It's pertinent to us because that's what they played when we came out of the Biosphere.
Oh, okay.
A big fanfare. But it's also a really interesting piece of history, and coming out to support the war effort and the effort going against tyranny and trying to keep the world free. This is a really amazing time in world history that this comes out as a piece of really American music. And sort of encapsulating American values. So that was a great one, Jane.
Yeah, no, I was interested because, I was a little conflicted. I'm like, oh, this is like, you could say this is war music, in one sense, right? But the fact is, we kind of are in this, we got these enormous challenges now, right? With climate change and anti-poverty has come a long way in the last few decades, but we still got a long way to go there. Wow.
Ukraine and just going backwards.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. Whew. Okay, last two.
Well, you got to have Propellerhead Spy Break. I mean, that's just Matrix.
And Matrix is certainly my favorite movie. I think it's yours. And then the very last one, Rage Against the Machine. Wake up! Because kind of we all have to, right?
Nice. But I let you guys do 20, right? Because there were
but we haven't got to the end
of
of 20 yet. So the rest of them are going to be like all of these from around the world that we started talking about in the beginning, right? So where we've but I haven't picked out the songs yet. I'll get you the songs.
Well, a good gamelan from Bali.
Okay, we're having an argument about gamelan. I'm sorry. Okay, you get gamelan. I'll think of something that's not your favorite that I'm going to make you listen to on our space mission. Okay.
Well, you got into Pavarotti, so. But it's so interesting because these are a lot of music tied to experience, right? When you hear it live, you connect to it in a way that you can connect to in a recording, but it's hard to if you have it otherwise. Some Chinese opera music is just like impenetrable to my brain, but some people just love it. It's a millennial old form of music. So some of these other world sort of defining kinds of Japanese shakuhachi music that remind us the diversity of cultures on the planet and how these cultures come together and the necessity of diversity and how the migrations have changed music. So I want to include some of those other music that you don't normally hear.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what you come up with for the last few tunes for your playlist. It's funny. One of the things that I think about for let's say a long-term space mission is what you experience in Biosphere 2, which is you two can have your playlist, but your fellow crewmates are going to have their playlists. And for all you know, one of your fellow crewmates may just have Chinese opera music. So
thankfully we have earbuds now.
There you go. Until you have to run them through the system PA on the ship or something.
So the thing is, Guillermo, we think about this is actually an ongoing active conversation for us here at Space Perspective, because our explorers, we're actually going to really encourage our explorers to create their own playlists so that they take them to space, right? We have a whole system on board where we can play it for everyone or play it individually. So I think it's going to be really fun to see what our different explorers come up with for their 6-hour journey to space and back. I think it's going to be really cool. So I like this idea. We should have people publish their playlists. I think that's awesome.
We do have a YouTube. I'm sorry, not a YouTube, a ZZ Top themed flight already.
Really? Where that's all anyone listens to the entire flight?
Yeah.
And I think they're gonna dress up as ZZ Top and do the whole 9 yards.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yeah,
that is so
I think
cool.
We're not going to put them on the same flight as the people who want the very meditative music and experience.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
But I think also though, so as we were playing music in the Biosphere, we want people to play music in Spaceship Neptune, right? We have a platform there for people to actually perform.
To bring instruments, you mean?
To bring instruments. Yeah.
Do an improv through the flight and record the improv. I think there's lots of ways for people to use music to explore the experience.
And to play with people around the world. So one of the things we did, remember we were in the Biosphere in the early 90s, right? So none of this was possible. So we had telephones, really. So we jammed with people around the world and we used the telephone to do it. But now imagine all the tech we have now. You got people in space and people on the ground. We could have a global concert with people playing in space and playing in different locations around the world. Wouldn't that be incredible?
While you're doing that from Neptune, you just need Hadfield back on the ISS and get him chiming in, and you're all set.
Wouldn't that be insane? Oh,
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. Well, let me shift gears a little bit, just to kind of maybe start wrapping things up a little bit. You addressed this a little bit earlier, but I wanted to just kind of ask you directly. I know you two have basically spent a big chunk of your lives helping to push humanity forward and outward and make us a multi-planet species. So semi-philosophical question, but in that effort, what role does music play, or does it play a role?
I think music helps us understand who we are as a species. It's sort of the way art helps us discover ourselves. And I think unless we know ourselves fairly well, we will not be successful at either living on other planets or even getting off planets. So it's a bit of a know thyself. And I think music helps us explore who we are as a species and as individuals.
So then to springboard off of that, what I'm excited about with what we're doing with Spaceship Neptune and everything that offers us is being able to take a huge variety of people to space, because I want them to experience it in all of these different ways and then communicate it in different ways. And I think music has a way of just communicating experiences that nothing else can. It just gets to the heart of the emotion of it. And I can't wait actually to have musicians, artists of all kinds experience this and tell us what they see.
Perfect. That's exactly the best way to end this interview. Couldn't say it any better. Well, thank you both so much for joining us for this and for putting so much thought into this playlist. I look forward to the rest of your songs so that we can include them in the playlist. And yeah, and we'll go from there. So Jane and Taber, thank you so much for being here.
Awesome. Thanks. It was super fun.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jane Poynter and Taber MacCallum. As usual, we will include all of their information in the description below, as well as links to the songs that they selected for their spaceflight playlist. Until next time, I'm Guillermo from Fortivo Music Channel, wishing you happy listening.